Welcome back, everybody. Good afternoon, and welcome back to California ACEP's 2020 Advanced Conference. We're now going to move into the medical student track portion of today's programming. My name is Anneli von Reinhart. I'm the Medical Student Clerkship Director and an Assistant Residency Director at UCSF Fresno, and I have served as the track chair for our Medical Student Track Planning Committee this year. We've worked really hard to bring you a lot of really fantastic, high-quality content today, focusing on the needs of medical students. Our focus this year really has been on trying to address the many new challenges and big changes to the application to residency process for 2020. So a lot of our content today is going to give information, advice, and guidance to those of you who are fourth-year medical students trying to navigate this new and ever-changing process this year. I think it'll also be really helpful for more junior medical students who are trying to get a sense of what to expect and to mentally prepare for what this process might be like for you when the time comes in the not too distant future for you to be applying for residency as well. And we do have a segment that's specifically geared towards first, second, and third year medical students, talking about what you can be doing at this point and your stage of medical school to start to prepare to be the best, strongest applicant you can be for emergency medicine residency. I think a lot of the information today will also be really helpful for any residents or faculty out there who are in a position to advise medical students. I know for me this year, a lot of really great questions keep coming up, the answer to which is, I'm not sure. We've never done it this way before. So we're going to try and provide you with as much information and guidance so that you can answer all of those highly relevant questions. We're going to start things off with Dr. Jessie Werner. She's going to talk about how you as an applicant can research programs. How do you figure out where you want to apply? How do you figure out where you want to do emergency medicine residency? Then we're going to move on to Dr. Kim Sokol, who's going to talk about how to make your application awesome, focusing on what fourth year applicants can do right now at this phase of their ERAS application process. How do you put the finishing touches on your CV, on your personal statement to make it the best that it can be? And just a word of warning, she's going to use the term red flag a lot. Some of you may hear the term red flag and think insurmountable obstacle, giant problem. And she's not using it in that way. When you hear red flag in that presentation, I want you to think of it more as something that may require a little bit of explanation, an aspect of your application that you may want to comment on or explore a little bit further, not an insurmountable obstacle or giant disaster. After Dr. Sokol wraps up, we're going to have Drs. Via, Berger, and Kitamura, who are going to talk to our more junior medical students about what you can do as a first, second, or third year medical student to prepare to be the strongest applicant you can be when it comes time for you to apply for EM residency. So without further ado, let's kick it off and move on to our fantastic medical student track, starting out with Dr. Jessie Werner, talking about how to research and evaluate emergency medicine residency programs.
Hi guys, I'm Jessie Werner, and today we're going to talk about how to research and evaluate programs. All right, COVID-19 ruined almost everything. I completely understand, but I'm here to tell you it's going to be okay. You are going to match. I'm sure. Hi guys, I'm Jessie Werner, and today we're going to talk about how to research and evaluate programs. All right, COVID-19 ruined almost everything. I completely understand, but I'm here to tell you it's going to be okay. You are going to match. I'm sure that you're feeling really anxious about this upcoming application process and especially interviews because a lot of them are going to be remote now, but it will work out. You can get a great vibe for the program even over Zoom. You will match, you will get a job, and it will be okay. Let's talk about how to research programs. Never underestimate the power of word of mouth. You want to reach out to people who have graduated from your program, they're now residents, and you want to find out what their experience is. Do they like their programs? What was their experience researching various residencies? Talk to faculty who you respect and admire and get their advice. There are also great online resources. So SAEM, AMA, and EMRA all have interactive online resources that you can use to research programs. You can search by program location or program name, and it will give you information like the setting of the program, the number of residents, how many years the program is, and this will walk you through all the different residencies in the country. You might be wondering if you should do a 3 or a 4-year program. And the answer is, it doesn't really matter. But we will review some of the advantages and disadvantages to both, because they do have advantages and disadvantages. One argument for a 3-year program is that you're done in 3 years. So then you can go out into the workforce, start earning money, start paying back your loans. Kind of appealing. An advantage of a 4-year program is that in medicine, you can never know enough. So some people really like that 4th year where they can hone their skills and have a little bit of extra time to practice in a safe environment. Another thing you need to think about is what kind of place do you want to practice when you're done? If you want to go straight into academics, some people might argue that a 4-year program gives you a little extra edge because then you can supervise 4th-year residents. That being said, if you know you want to do a fellowship, you might say, well, I'm going to do 3 years, do my fellowship, and then go work in academics. So it's really 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. You have to figure out what works best for you and for your family. Let's talk about community, county, academic. There are 3 different big types that you can think about when it comes to residency. Now, actually, I trained at a place that had all 3 of these, and some residencies do have all 3 places involved in your residency training. But I'm going to break them down for you a little bit. So a community center, for the most part, has a pretty insured population, usually has a larger geriatric population, and has some subspecialists available for you. If you want to go work in the community environment, training at a community center makes a lot of sense. Let's talk about county. So a county center generally has a less insured population. Usually you will see quite a bit of trauma, usually penetrating trauma, and has a wide breadth of socioeconomic and cultural diversity. So if you want a county experience, those are all things that you should consider. When you're talking about academics, this is where you have tons of subspecialists available to you. So the advantage is you have tons of subspecialists available to you. The disadvantage is you have tons of subspecialists available to you, taking away your procedures. So something to consider. That being said, you're also going to see really interesting pathology because academic centers are the tertiary centers, and you're going to have great research opportunities. It's no surprise that residency is hard. It's a lot of hours and it's a lot of work. So wellness should be a very important consideration when you're thinking about residency programs. Some things to consider are shift hours. So you can work 8-hour shifts, 9-hour shifts, anywhere from 10 to 12-hour shifts. And it just varies based on the program. Some programs even have different hours on certain weekends. So these are important questions to ask. When you think about shift hours, you should also think about the number of shifts you're working. So some programs, if you work a longer shift, such as a 12-hour shift, you work less per month. Generally, you're going to end up working somewhere between 16 and 21 shifts per month. Also important in wellness are things like vacation time, orientation time, benefits. If you have kids, something like childcare is really going to matter to you, and these are important questions to ask when you're interviewing for residency. A lot of programs have time for orientation at the beginning of your residency, and this can range anywhere from a week to a month. So that's another important question to ask. And also make sure if you do have a month of orientation, do you have to make that time up at the end of residency? Vacation time, this can be anywhere from 3 weeks to 4 weeks, sometimes longer. So all important questions. Location is an important topic when it comes to residency applications. And the big message here is wherever you end up, it's going to be fine. You might end up someplace you've never been before. It's okay. Look at it as an adventure. Everyone's in it together. You're not alone. All of your co-residents are in the exact same boat. It's only 3 or 4 years. You're going to get to live someplace new, experience new people. It's going to be a positive thing if you think about it as a positive thing. So important things to consider when it comes to location. Affordability, that's a huge one. Is this a city where you can afford to buy a house or rent? Do you need a car to commute? And what's the commute time? I mean, like we said, residency is pretty tough. You're going to be working a lot. Do you really want to spend half an hour to an hour in the car commuting to work? These are important considerations. Other things, nature, proximity to family, outdoor space. Think about it all when you're applying. Some people might say that interviews are the most important part of the residency application process. Unfortunately, they are also the most difficult part secondary to COVID-19. And I just want to say, No program has this figured out. There's no consensus regionally, nationally. The programs don't know what they're going to do about this, how they're going to involve residents, how they're going to get you to come to their program, just like you're not totally sure how you're going to evaluate a place over Zoom. There's a few advantages. One is you save a ton of money. You don't have to fly to all these places across the country. In fact, you don't even have to buy a whole suit. You can just wear the upper part. Like, for example, right now I'm in my pajamas. You just can't tell. So, important things to think about is that you still want to try and get a sense of how these people are interacting with each other. Do they seem happy? Do you like the residents when you do talk to them? Do you like the faculty? Do you like the program director? Do they express interest in you? Are they showing up for the Zoom call? How many people are on that call and how many people go to the residency? So try your best to get a vibe. It is tough over Zoom, I know that, but you can still get a sense of the people and ask the questions that you need answered. We've talked about program type, we've talked about program location, we've talked about the things that programs have to offer. What I want you to remember is there is no best residency program. You are the program. The program is what it is because of its residents. And wherever you go, it's all about the relationships that you form and the attitude that you have. So if you bring a positive attitude, you can set up those relationships and you can accomplish everything that you want to, no matter where you go. Listen to your gut. Choose a place that works best for you and your family.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for tuning in to the Med Student Track of Virtual Cal ACEP this year. My name is Kim Sokol, and I'm the Simulation Director and Core Faculty Member of Emergency Medicine at Cahuilla Delta in Visalia, California. For the next 15 minutes, I'll be talking to you all about how to make your application awesome. As you can see on the timetable, this talk will highlight the residency application from the perspective of a fourth-year medical student. But if you are a first, second, or third-year medical student, please don't turn away. I promise that this will be useful for you as well. Before we begin, I want you all to stand up and just stretch it out for about 30 seconds. Do something like high knees or jumping jacks or push-ups just to get your blood flowing back into your fingers, your toes, and most importantly, your brain so that you can focus. And then once you're done, I promise you can get back onto the couch or whatever other comfy spot you are lounging and watching this conference. Go ahead and everyone do that. Once everyone is refreshed, let's dig into this important topic. So keeping in line with that energy-producing interactive nature of this talk, I want for you all to take a sheet of paper for some notes. For all my writers in the room, you may want to grab a sheet of paper and a pen for some handwriting. For all of my techie people, or maybe just lazy, I think I fall under that category, you can just simply open up a word processing application on the laptop or desktop computer on which you'll be watching this conference. I'm going to be doing the same on my end, and so together, by the end of this, we are actually going to make a worksheet that you can refer to at the end of the lecture in order to help you make that residency application as awesome as possible. I'm going to break for a couple seconds and open up my own Word document while all of you get set up and do the same thing on your end. All right, once you have a sheet of paper open, we are going to call the document the same thing as this talk to keep things from getting super confusing. So we got how to make your emergency medicine residency application awesome. Let's go ahead and put that here at the top. In order to prep for this talk, I've reached out to all of the emergency medicine program directors in California so that you can hear from them exactly what they're looking for in an applicant and get some key pointers into what to put into that awesome application of yours. Throughout this talk, I'll be sprinkling in some of their advice along with some advice of my own that I've gotten from two key websites that I used to research for this. Speaking of, I'm going to write them here so that you can copy them down and refer to them later when working on your applications. Here we have where to go for help. We have our first one, which is going to be this super, super cool Med Student Advising Guide from EMRA. I'm going to put that right here. What this is the whole book you can check out. It's free on the EMRA website. Chapter 7, though, so I'm just going to list that right here, is the one that's specifically focused on the ARIS application. And the whole thing is all building the ARIS application, broken down by step. It's going to add in a ton of different pearls along the way. The second website is this one, residencyexplorer.org. I know a lot of you have questions about how competitive you are as an applicant, and this website is going to help you out with just that question. It's sponsored by the AAMC, and so it's going to allow you to compare programs in terms of things like quick facts, application and match trends from prior years, application information, like more of the housekeeping stuff, current resident information, and then more specific things like practice environment and educational research opportunities. So for those of you that are nervous about how competitive you are when submitting your applications, especially in light of the fact that this year is so different and we're limiting the amount of interviews you can go on, I'd recommend you refer to the site first to see where you match up in terms of prior candidates. The next big housekeeping thing that I want for you guys to write down are 2 major dates when it comes to this year's residency applications. This is actually where it's going to differ a little bit from EMRA. I don't think that's been updated to reflect for this year's dates because they're different. So the 2 big dates for you guys to remember are September 1st of 2020. This is when all of you guys can actually start submitting your application. So hopefully you've started to do that already. And then in about a month from now, October 21st of 2020, programs can actually start to review those applications. So both of those things are on there. October 21st, 2020 is also when the MSPE or the Dean's Letter is released to every program. All right, now we're going to get to the meat of the lecture and just spend the rest of the time writing down all of the components of the ARIS application and then starting to just take a big deep dive in there too. I can't type today. So starting from the top, we got your, oh, and just a FYI, if you are writing this by hand, please allow for a few lines of space in between each section, because once we list them all out, we're going to go back and go through each one in a little bit more detail, and I just want to make sure that you have room for notes. All right, first we have your personal and biographic information. And this is where you're going to provide things like where you're from, where you currently live, any military service obligations you have, and the option to include whether or not your couple's matching. We're not going to spend a huge time talking about this in this lecture, but I will say that you should absolutely discuss this decision with your advisors and your partner if you're going to disclose your couple's match status on the application. Please know that you are not mandated to disclose this, and there may be some benefits and potential risks of doing so. So all the more reason to talk about this with your advisor prior to writing it on your application. Next, we have your CV. And this is going to be your chance on the application to really, really shine, specifically to put things like your education, any personal interests, hopefully a personal interest that you can list here. Your experiences, this includes volunteer, work, and research. Any licensures that you may have. If you don't, that's not a problem at all. Just if you do, this is another place that you can put them. And any publications that you might have. Again, definitely not expected at your point in training, but if you do have them, this is a great way to shine right there too. Going from there, I'm just going to make a new tab on here. We move on to the personal statement, and this is the part of the application that'll really allow for the reader to get to know you as a person. As I'm sure all of you can relate to, this is the part of the application that typically triggers the most anxiety for medical students. So we'll definitely come back to this in a little bit so that I can provide you some tips and tricks to help calm you down, make you a little less anxious, and really make this the best personal statement that you can possibly write. From there, we have your letters of recommendation. Let's get that typed in right here. And new this year will be the fact that you will likely only have one slow, and I promise you are in the same boat as everyone else, so please don't let that make you anxious at all. From there, we have the USMLE transcripts, which I'm going to add right down here. And again, we do know that the clinical skills portions of both the USMLE and the COMLEX have been suspended until further notice, so you are not alone in that, not the only person there too. After that, we have the MSPE, or the Dean's Letter. From there, the med school transcripts. And then finally, your photo. And that, my friends, is your ARIS application. I want for you to all take a look at this list that you created for yourself right now. So we got this whole big thing. And cross off the portions that you cannot change anymore. So we can just kind of get that off the table. So this would be your personal and biographic information. You can't change where you're from. Also, this CV. A little caveat here, while you can't change the experiences and all the education that you've already had, you can alter how you present them on your application, and you got to be a little careful about this too. So we're going to focus on that a little bit as well. Personal statement, you're definitely writing all those now. I know you are. Your letters of recommendation, maybe you have one more person to ask, but for the most part, they're probably all kind of done, set in stone, so we'll cross that off. USMLE, I know you haven't taken the second part of either step 2 or the clinical skills portion of the COMLEX, but your other stuff is already done. The MSPE, haven't seen it yet, but it is all done too. Med school transcripts, yeah, you still have a couple more classes to go, but frankly, after this part of 4th year, we're not really looking either as residencies. And then your photo, which you do maybe still have to take or not. So as you can see, this talk really shouldn't be called how to make your application awesome, but instead how to make your personal statement and maybe your photo, if you still have yet to take it, as awesome as possible. Keep in mind that you can make a separate personal statement for each program, and given the fact that one of the themes this year is kind of how concerned we are as programs that the virtual format of all of the interviews is going to really limit the amount of contact with each applicant. So the more personalized you can make your personal statement, which may very well mean creating a personalized personal statement for each program, the better. I want for you now to take a moment with this piece of paper, just looking at all the things left that you have to change, again, your personal statement and the photo, and think about why a program director or some other person on the resident selection board would want to choose one candidate over another. The answer is really all about fit. We want to make sure that we're selecting residents that are a good fit for the program so that they're happy. Therefore, they can be in the best frame of mind possible and be successful in their residency. Because let's face it, residency can be a very trying and challenging time with long hours. And if someone isn't happy under even good circumstances, they're definitely not going to be happy when they're faced with the end of a 24-hour MICU call or a long way from home with their friends and family. So these are the types of things that you need to highlight in your CV or personal statement to ensure that the people that we're choosing are a really good fit for the program, because ultimately it's all about you, the resident, and your chance of success and happiness and great well-being. Keeping that in mind, let's go back to these sections that I know you can't change now, but they may produce some red flags that you're going to want to cover in order to help you find a good focus for that personal statement. And we'll keep a note of them here too. One of the biggest red flags I will note from the personal and biographic section is that the applicant will have zero ties to the location of our residency. So I'm just going to put in here, we're just going to tab over, get rid of the strike through, and say red flag to address in PS. Again, PS is your personal statement. Let's just code that there. Not from the area. We get a lot of questions on the importance of geographic location to an application. And the answer here, again, is just making sure that they're a good fit for the program. So if we just want to make sure the candidate isn't here in a residency all by themselves with no support network to turn to when times are getting rough. That being said, if you know you're born and raised in New York with undergrad in New York and medical school in New York, and all of a sudden you want to come out to California for residency, that could potentially raise a red flag in the mind of a program director from California. So it would be definitely up to you to put some line in your personal statement about the reasons that you want to come up to California. It may be as simple as, you know, I really just want to change of pace for a couple years and I've always wanted to live in California. Definitely no problem with that. We just want to know why you're suddenly reaching out to California programs for residency. Next is your CV. I had you cross this off, again stating that you can't change the experience that you've had already, but you can change how you present these. And again, when I reached out to the program directors from California to get their taste as to kind of what makes an application better than others, both Dr. Zamin from Kern and Dr. Fernandez-Frackleton from Harvard UCLA mentioned that they really, really like hearing about all of a candidate's personal interests and non-medical experiences. We found that people who have previously worked as chefs or college athletes have the traits that it takes, and it really translates over to get through a crazy hard time such as residency. Therefore, you should own and highlight these things on your CV. So I'm just going to put in here, for your personal interests, go ahead and include your non-medical activities that are important to you. Let's just tab that over right here. The other thing that we see a lot of is non-emergency medicine medical experience, such as multiple publications from a neurology lab, several research experiences in a vet research lab, or prior licensures in another specialty. Those are definitely not bad things per se. We love any sort of exposure that you have to the medical field, but it does beg the question to us on reading your application on whether or not you truly want to be in emergency medicine, or if you may potentially be looking at other fields. Therefore, you should definitely include something in your personal statement on what you did before and how this actually led you to the field of emergency medicine. It may be as simple as, you know, I tried this other thing and it didn't like it. Now I want to do emergency medicine, and that's okay. We just want to hear it from you. So I'm going to add in these red flags to address in your personal statement. We'll take things like, so for your experiences, we'll just say red flag to address in personal statements, multiple non-emergency medicine experiences. And then let's just copy paste that so we can edit it to reflect our licensures. Oops. So we'll say multiple non-emergency medicine licensures. And then same thing with the publications. Another red flag to address is your multiple non-emergency medicine publications. So we'll just put that right in there. Moving on to your letters of rec, no real red flags here, but if you do have multiple letters that were from the same specialty, medicine, it does bring up some of the potential issues. Well, so we'll just say red flag to address in personal statement is not right here. We'll just put this for the letters of recommendation, is non-emergency medicine letters of rec. Again, not a bad thing, but if there's multiple ones from another specialty, we want to hear why. Why are you doing emergency medicine now? Moving on down the line to your test transcripts. If you potentially scored very low on either section of your USMLE or your COMLEX, and you had a significant reason as to why you did so, such as, you know, you were going through a particularly stressful time in your life, or if you didn't really have a reason, but then were able to improve your score by applying some sort of special remediation plan, so those are things that a program director will absolutely consider when making their rank list for their program. So we'll just say, again, your red flag to address in your personal statements. Let's just copy this. Are low scores with a reason. And then the same thing for your MSPE and your med school transcripts. If you have some low grades or significant gaps in your medical education, and you had some either very significant reasons as to why this happened, or if you turn things around and were able to apply a remediation program for yourself, these are, again, things that you should comment on in your personal statement. So we'll say your MSPE, still have it copy pasted from before, so your red flag here, any gaps or low grades, And then same thing from your med school transcript as well. So all things that should go into that personal statement to make sure that we know you're serious about emergency medicine, your scores, all that good stuff too. We don't want to save that yet. Whoops. Of course, a habit, I think. All right, you guys. And now that we've gone through all of the cross-off sections, we're just going to spend the last few minutes giving you guys a few more pointers to focus your personal statements on, and then a few tips for the photo. Going back to the personal statement, the most common theme of all of the program directors that gave me some advice on how to really make your application awesome is that they just want to hear about you. Remember that a lot of these places get over 700 personal statements each year that they have to read, so keeping yours very interesting and unique will be super helpful. The other thing too that I think a lot of people are going to take extra advantage of this year is, again, that idea that each one of their personal statements is unique to that program. This doesn't mean that you have to rewrite your personal statement for every single program. That would be insane. But you may want that you would research them prior to submitting that application, and that you really think that you're going to be a good fit for that program. Dr. Lee from Arrowhead, Dr. Fee from UCSF, and Dr. Hurnan from Kuya Delta all made comments about how you should absolutely learn as much as you can about programs that you're interested in from their websites or virtual meet and greets, and then include that information in your personal statements. Just make sure that you're matching up the correct personal statement to the correct residency. Otherwise, that could be looked at very poorly by that residency. So be really, really careful there too. So for our personal statement, we're just going to go back here to keep them unique. Remember, 700 program or 700 personal statements per residency can make someone go a little crazy. And then add a paragraph per residency with specific facts about that program. And then finally, the photo. Not required for your application, but I will say again, more than 700 applications a year. And so having a photo that truly shows who you are yet is professional will really help us to jog our memories when we're making a rank list for that program. So as long as it's done professionally on a clean background, wearing professional dress, I would absolutely advise that you do submit a photo. So our tips here, we'll just say not required, but can help jog memories. And then keep them professional, please. Not the time for your crazy, crazy selfie. Okay, well, let's sum up everything that we talked about in the last 15 minutes. First, I gave you guys 2 websites that you can refer to later in order to get a little more information about everything that we talked about. Next, I gave you 2 important dates that you'll need to know when doing all of your applications. And then finally, we went through each section of the ARIS application, focusing specifically on the personal statement and the photo, because the rest you can't really change. And again, not trying to scare you with that, but rather empower you to find those sections of the parts that you can't change in order to help you focus your personal statement on those things. Last but not least, just a few summary points to remember. Please, please, please have a friend or family member read through your application for spell check and grammar check purposes. And last but not least, have that friend or family member tell you whether or not that application truly represents you. So let's just take a moment to add that down here. Remember to do spell and grammar check, and then make sure the application represents you. I think that Dr. Barnes, who's the program director at UC Davis, said it best when he wrote me, saying that they value kindness, respect, compassion, and human dignity way more than we do medical knowledge. And I think that's true all around. Since medical knowledge we can teach you, the other stuff we can't. So make sure that your application reflects all of those beautiful traits that we know all of you have. And we cannot wait to meet you during this application season. I'm going to finish up by typing my email address on the bottom of this worksheet so that you have it in case you need to ask me any questions about this talk. And I hope you do enjoy the rest of your days. There we go. Talk to you later. Have a good day.
Hi, everyone. I'm here today with a couple of colleagues from the UCLA Ronald Reagan All of You Medical Center Emergency Medicine Program. And we're here today to tell you more about how to make your application awesome.
Hey everyone, I'm Max. I am the first year medical education and simulation fellow. I went to medical school at USC, Keck School of Medicine, and just finished residency out at NYU Bellevue in New York City.
Hi everyone, I'm Kellie. I'm from Hawaii and I just finished my 1-year fellowship. I trained at UCLA Ronald Reagan All of You as well, and now I'm here to stay at All of You Medical Center.
And you met me in the beginning, but my name is Stephen Villa, and I am originally from Phoenix and went to med school and did residency up at UCSF San Francisco General, and have now been at UCLA on year 2. But before we get into what makes your application awesome, we thought we'd take some time and just describe the current state of emergency medicine. You may have heard that it's getting slightly more competitive, but we wanted to show you some data that hopefully will put you at ease. So on the left, you can see in figure 1 that the number of applications has gone up. And this was taken most recently from the AAMC data from 2020. But as you see in figure 2, the number of applicants and spots have also gone up, which hopefully will work in your favor.
Great. And now, so transitioning into what we want to talk about here with kind of making your application awesome is kind of what are program directors really looking for? What do they care about? So this was a study actually done back in 2000, but still I think has some validity even 20 years later. But this was a survey of program directors that kind of looked at how important they thought different aspects of the application were. And a lot of these things are going to come more in your 4th year, like your EM rotation grades and interviews and things like that. But there are definitely some things that you can start doing now in your 1st, 2nd, and 3rd year of medical school that can really make an impact.
Yeah. So what are some of the things that you can do now while you're in MS1 to an MS3? Well, you can still do your best on your preclinical classes, perform as well as you can on your core clerkships, and while you're there, see if you can get a letter of recommendation from someone or find a mentor, which we'll touch on in a little bit. And while step 1 will be transitioning in the future to pass-fail, still study for that, do as best as you can, and then find some extra curricular activities to show what else you're interested in, and whether, if that's research, then also you can get on and start doing some projects and see if you can get some publications on your CV as well.
Yeah, and I think more important than anything is really kind of getting involved in something, and ideally something that you're passionate about and something you love doing. So whether that is research or teaching or volunteering, kind of finding 1 or 2 or a few things that you're really passionate about and kind of sticking with them, and maybe rising to a leadership position, or like Kellie was mentioning, maybe getting involved in a project or publication. Showing that real continued involvement is really going to help you on your application.
And one other thing that will definitely serve you well is finding a mentor. The paper that you see that we're citing here demonstrated that those who found a mentor were able to have a more favorable match. And really, not only this goes beyond the match. Mentors will forever be helpful to you. And remember, there's not one person that's a fits all. Just try to find as many people that have your best interest at heart, and hopefully they'll help guide you to a match that you seek.
So feel free to contact us. These are our email addresses, and we're more than happy to answer any of your questions. And thanks so much for listening.
All right, some great tips there about thinking about where to apply, how to prepare, how to make your application awesome. And that was a great talk by Kim. Hi, Kim. Thanks for being live on the chat for us. We appreciate that. And I think in terms of making your application awesome, the beauty is in the eye of the beholder, right? Every program director and APD who's holding an application and looking through it is going to have a slightly different thought process about what applications are awesome. So I think hearing lots of opinions about that is helpful. It's sort of like the finance talk that we had earlier in the day, where you hear one opinion and it's different from this one, it's different from that one, and they're all valid. And so I wanted to see
what tips, Anneli, what tips do you have that you want to share when you're looking at an application? What makes an applicant stand out to you?
Yeah, I definitely love and agree with what Dr. Sokol said about including your interests and your hobbies and your unique experiences outside of medicine. It's always super fun to see those little tidbits in people's applications and to start to get a whole person sense of who people are as unique snowflakes. I remember in medical school when I was approaching my ERAS application, I told my roommate, like, what is this section about hobbies? Hobbies are for boring people, because I didn't know what to write and it was stressing me out. But getting, any little thing that you love, that you're passionate about, that's a cool thing that you've done that you like to talk about, that can help us get to know you is really fantastic. When it comes to the personal statements and whether or not you should target them to individual programs that you're applying to, this is something that's coming up a lot this year in particular. And I personally certainly don't expect to be reading 700 personalized personal statements telling me why every single applicant loves Fresno. But I think that it is valuable if you have something specific that you want to say to a specific program about why you're so interested in their program, why you're so interested in this particular curriculum or opportunity that they offer, or why you think you'd be a great fit, it's great to have an opportunity to communicate that to that program in some way. And adding maybe a brief snippet to your personal statement is one of the ways that you can potentially do that. So if you feel like there's something really specific that you want to communicate about why you and that program are such a great fit, then maybe you can add a brief statement to your personal statements for that program or for a couple programs. Definitely, if you're going to do that, you have to be super careful that you're assigning the right file to the right program. You don't want to send your love letter to UCSF to UCLA by mistake.
Yes,
and I don't think it's, like, could get awkward.
I don't know if things are changing. When I applied, I never heard that advice. I think it was basically assumed that you wrote one personal statement and it went to everyone, and that in no way was counted against you. So if that's starting to shift a little bit, that's news to me. I am a fellowship program director for the medical education fellowship at UCSF Fresno, and I do expect personalized personal statements, but I have like less than 5 applicants for that position. So it's not that big of a deal, I think, for a fellow who's applying to maybe 5 to 10 programs to make those personal. But when you're applying to 60 or however many, don't quote me on that number and no one freak out because I said 60. But when you're applying to way more programs, that seems like it would be a ton more work and very error prone to try to make those personalized.
Yeah, I think it's kind of a new idea that's coming up a lot this year as people are trying to navigate this whole new process, and everyone's stressed and everyone's worried. But I think the potential benefit of doing it for every program is probably pretty slim. And it sounds like an enormous amount of work to write like 65 different personal statements if you're applying to that many programs. So everyone's going to have to decide what works for them.
What if someone's like for sure knows that they want to come here to Fresno, for example? Would you want to see a letter that was just targeted specifically to Fresno? I mean, is that where you're saying that's where the possible exception lies?
Sure. I think if you have, like a really persuasive or compelling reason why you want to be at my program, then it's potentially helpful for you to explain that so that I can take that into account when I'm reading your whole application and figuring out if we're going to invite you to interview. For some programs, I think geography matters a lot more than others. They consider that differently. It's, and making the case for yourself is what this whole application process is about. But I'm not expecting to see love letters about Fresno on most people's applications or emails about it necessarily. And we don't normally have those. So I think that the vast majority of applications, I don't expect to see them, and we don't need them to figure out who we're going to invite to interview. It's sort of bonus gravy.
Great. Now, before we move on to the second half here of the medical student track, do you have any other final things that you want to point out? Any key learning points? Or are you ready to move on?
Well, I loved what was said in the last few moments of Dr. Berger and Via and Kitamura's talk about finding a mentor. And sometimes it can be really challenging to find an EM mentor at your program. So I want to make sure that all the medical students out there know about the mentoring programs that EMRA has, that LMSA and SNMA have, and some great links were put in the chat earlier about some of the EM advising resources through EMRA that are available as well. So even if you don't have a ton of emergency medicine advisors at your particular school, there's a lot of ways to get connected with the EM community through EMRA, through Cal ACEP, through all of these big national organizations. And I encourage you to check those out. And to please keep using the chat. I so appreciate Dr. Sokol being here. We've invited all of our speakers today who pre-recorded their content to be available in the chat for any points of clarification, follow-up questions, or to continue the conversation forward. So please do continue to use the chat. So our next segment, we're going to move on to the latter half of our programming today, and it's going to be all kind of focused around interviewing. So first up, we have Hurnan Vongsachang, and Dr. Vongsachang is going to be talking about how to prepare for and nail your virtual interviews. And I'm really excited to have her talking about this. I've only met Hurnan twice, but I remember it very well because it was when I interviewed her, and she absolutely knocked it out of the park. It was one of my favorite, most fun interviews that I've had. And now she's going to teach you how to knock it out of the park just like she did. Then we're going to have Drs. Hu and Orozco talk to us about how to prepare for the virtual interviews from a tech aspect, how to make sure that you got everything that you need to be seen, to look good on camera, to sound good. And then we're going to have Drs. Oldroyd and Alexeeva talk about what to do if, say, it's November and you're not getting any interview invites, or you're not getting as many as you'd hoped or expected. And there's a lot of really great advice in that segment for any students who find themselves at any point in this process not exactly where they hoped and expected to be. There's some really great advice about how to proceed, and you still can proceed even if it's not all going exactly according to plan. That's sort of a theme for 2020, right? So I'm really excited for all of this next content, and then we'll come back together after a quick video from Cal EMRA.
Hi there, my name is Hurnan Vongsachang, and I'm a current PGY2 at the LA County USC Emergency Medicine Program. In this short segment, I'll be addressing tips for interviews for you fourth-year medical students, and hopefully it'll be helpful for your months coming forward. In terms of question number 1, what to expect on interview day, of course this year is going to look completely different than what had been traditional in the past, and a lot of it will be virtual. In the past, on interview day, usually you would be paired one-on-one with a faculty member or a resident and have a nice 20 to 30 minute conversation just talking about anything during that segment for you to learn not only about the program, but also for the program to learn more about you as a person. I think that that goal will still be the same, even though it'll be mostly virtual this year. And there could be more of those packed into one interview session from what I'm anticipating, because we're trying to learn the most that we can about you in the time that we have and get a lot of different data points. In terms of socials, again, super different this year. I know for our program, there are informal COVID-approved size gatherings during the interview season. Of course, it's not super confirmed yet, so please don't quote me on that. But there's also pairings that we have, mentor-mentee sort of relationships to try to get to know the applicant a little bit better. There are a lot of different alternatives as to what socials can look like this year. I would check with the program that you're interested in itself to see what they're offering, and that's also a great way to show interest in the program as well. And so COVID-19 has really changed a lot about how EM is conducting these interviews, because so much of it has to do with how you fit in with the program. So I really check in with the program of interest. The second question would be, how do I answer that grand old question, why emergency medicine? And to that question, I say, have a really compelling story. It doesn't have to be a life-changing sort of life-saving moment, but I would say that if you're able to provide details either of yourself as a patient in the emergency department, God forbid, or if you were a care or provider in the emergency department as a medical student and something about that encounter really cinched your decision, I'd be happy if you're able to expound upon that. What I would discourage talking about are things like, I love the lifestyle, I love the shift work, I love not being able to, or I love not having to pre-round and things like that. I would not talk about those as much as why you would want to go into the field for that patient population, for that acuity and pathology, things like that. Good questions to ask about the program. I would say questions that you can't really ask on Google would be my go-to answer, because it's really easy to type in how many months of medicine wards do you have for your program. Super easy. But it's harder to kind of tease out how certain programs or residents or staff members feel about a certain topic. And if you're able to get more into the nitty-gritty, the feelings part of that certain topic, the better off you'll be. So for example, if you're interested in diversity and inclusion, it'd be great to ask about that during your interview, and to take a step further, instead of just saying, do you have diversity and inclusion committee efforts going on right now? Yes or no. That's super simple. You can Google that online. Please don't ask that question. Rather, I would recommend you asking, what kind of efforts are you all taking to improve the recruitment, improve medical student engagement of underrepresented backgrounds, things like that. That kind of shows that you took an interest but also took it even further. And finally, how do you stand out as an interviewee? Honestly, this year, with all that's going on, I really don't know. But from what previous seniors have told me and faculty members, a good tip to keep in mind is to be kind to whoever you meet along the way, virtual or in person. You never know what's going to end up as the ultimate snippet of a conversation at the decision table, and you want to always put the best foot forward. I know that won't be an issue for all of you, but just to always keep that in mind. All right, so in terms of creating the elevator pitch, in addition to the standard, what's your name, where you're from, which medical school you go to, my biggest advice would be to include something at the very end that describes you as a person outside of medicine, that allows the interviewer to sort of pick up and ask more questions, carry the conversation forward. So for example, my elevator pitch at the time would have been, hello everyone, or hi, my name is Hurnan and I'm from San Diego, California. I'm a current medical student at UC Riverside, which at the time is the newest medical school in California, so it comes with a lot of unique challenges and opportunities. I chose emergency medicine primarily because of my background growing up in a low-income, immigrant, non-English speaking family, and wanting to provide care for everyone 24/7, regardless of ability to pay and citizenship status. Things I like to do for fun. I love to run, I dance, I'm part of a dance team, and I play music, which has been a really integral part of my childhood and identity growing up. And also things that you might want to add or actually practice are just little nuances in your voice to make sure that it doesn't sound super rigid and super rehearsed either. You want it to be a conversation, welcoming, and be able to kind of facilitate that with the interviewer. In terms of how to anticipate curveball questions, there isn't really a way to anticipate or to answer them perfectly. What I've been told is that it's okay to take a couple of seconds for yourself to collect your thoughts and then respond. And it's okay to also say that to the interviewer too. If you are encountering a question that you don't really know how to answer right off the bat, I think it's appropriate to say, that's an interesting thought or an interesting question. Let me think about it for a couple seconds and just kind of think about it. And then once you have your thoughts sort of more formulated, more concrete, then go right ahead. And finally, in terms of spinning a negative experience and keeping a positive attitude, my biggest advice would be to always have some sort of takeaway lesson. And I'm sure you've heard this before. But the more important thing is that you take that lesson and be able to apply it to another experience or encounter that is similar, and apply the same lesson or takeaway and how that experience was different from the first one you experienced. And I feel that shows a growing mindset, a sort of humility, and the ability to analyze one's personal actions and be able to apply it to future occurrences. So that would be my advice on that part.
And with that being said, I hope that this segment was somewhat helpful. Feel free to reach out if you have any other questions about this topic or about LA County in general. I'd be happy to answer any questions you have.
Hello, future applicants. My name is Jose Orozco,
My name's Jeffrey Hu.
and we are both PGY2 residents in emergency medicine. Now, due to current circumstances, this has been a time that's been filled with a lot of uncertainty and a lot of change. Unfortunately, the residency application process is no exception to this.
This year, as you all know, there's the additional hurdle of doing your interviews virtually. Now, while video interviewing is not an entirely new concept, a lot of people don't know how to utilize it and don't know how to prepare or set it up in the best possible way.
So we're hoping we can help with this problem. What we've done is we've put together a series of videos, and our goal here is to help prepare you so that you can carry out your next video interview with confidence and with ease.
So first, we'll start with an example of a video interview that doesn't go very well.
All right.
Hi, my name is Angelica. I'll be conducting your interview today.
Hi, how you doing? Sorry, let me just make sure we get this. All right, that's perfect right there. So yeah, my name's Jose. Hey, nice to meet you.
Hi, Jose. How are you?
Doing well, doing well.
Good to hear. Can you tell me a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, sure. I grew up in the Central Valley after, sorry, my dog. Give me 1 second, okay? Sorry. Whoops. Apologize for that. Yeah, so I went to undergrad out there with my family, and then came out here for medical school. After medical school, just excited to get into emergency medicine.
Great. That's great to hear. Thank you for sharing that. Why emergency medicine?
Yeah, so emergency medicine, that's a really good question. Oh, sorry, my roommate just coming by here. So there's a lot of good reasons why I want to do emergency medicine. I talked to some people, and I know that it's a very flexible, so those are all good things to look forward to.
I'm sorry to interrupt, Jose. Do you mind repeating that for me? I couldn't hear you for about a good maybe 3 seconds.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. So I was just, kind of saying why I felt emergency medicine would be. You still there? Hello?
I apologize, Jose. Maybe we're having some connection issues. Let's move on to the next question. Can you tell me about a time where you faced conflict and how did you overcome it?
Conflict. That's something I was involved in a lot, back in high school. Sorry. All right, I apologize for that. But yeah, conflict is something, I was pretty good at dealing with conflict, so I think that's something that it's not going to be a problem for me in the emergency department.
Perfect. I think we covered a lot today. Do you have any questions for me?
No, I don't have any questions. Not really.
Okay, Jose. Well, I just want to thank you for your time. It was very nice to meet you. We'll be in contact, okay? That concludes our interview for today.
Okay. Thank you. Well, thank you for your time. I appreciate that. Whoa, that guy did not look prepared. Now, let's look at a better example.
Hi, good morning. My name's Dr. Dong. I will be conducting your interview today. How are you doing?
Hi, nice to meet you. My name is Jeffrey Hu. I'm really excited to be here, and I really want to thank you for the opportunity to interview with you.
Why don't we get started today by you telling me about yourself?
Well, I grew up in the Bay Area. I went to college in NorCal, where I studied biology, and then I went to med school in Southern California.
Excellent, excellent. Now tell me, why emergency medicine?
So I was drawn to emergency medicine for a number of reasons. No one day is quite like the other in the emergency department, and it's a specialty that's filled with intensity and unique challenges that I find myself really drawn to.
That makes a lot of sense. Thank you very much. This concludes our interview today.
Wonderful. Once again, I want to thank you for the opportunity, and I hope you have a great day. So that interview looked like it went a little better. We'll break it down and give you some tips that will help you succeed and make your interview as polished as possible. One of the first tips is to make sure you have a really solid internet connection. You can ensure that by plugging directly using an Ethernet cable into your modem, or if your computer or laptop does not have a Ethernet port, you should probably connect to a wireless network that is very reliable, or at least have other wireless networks around that are also reliable. You want to make sure you start in a small room that's carpeted, preferably. Maybe some nice furniture and some curtains. You also want to make sure that your background wall is near a window for good natural lighting. Now, I would not suggest using a large room, say a living room or a kitchen, because you can hear a lot of echoing, and there's also a lot of appliances and loud noises that can happen, like your AC, so make sure to turn off your AC, turn off any appliances that might make any sound. Make sure you put your phone on silent, close all the windows because you want to remove all outside noise. Notify friends, family, children, or any pets you have around, preferably get them out of the house during your interview. It's really important to tidy up all your surroundings, put away all your clothes, clean up the background, and make sure it's not too distracting. Now for the background, we recommend using maybe some simple wall art. You can use a plant, something unique but not distracting. Lighting is another critical thing that's often overlooked. You want even lighting on the face as well as the background. There's not too much light behind you so that you're creating a silhouette where your face is dark and the background is too bright. Just remember, proper lighting will make your face look bright and cheerful. You want to avoid looking like Emperor Palpatine. Some lighting setups that we recommend are something like a ring light, which is this device here, lamps on either side in front of your face. But the most important thing is to be near a window, especially if you can have the window face you. That's nice and diffuse and makes you look natural. Another thing is to make sure that you have really good audio, both for listening and for talking to the other person. We recommend using something like a lavalier mic. It's also known as a lapel mic. You can also use the mic attached to your wireless headphones or like a USB microphone. One important thing that people overlook is to make sure that your sound is dampened. So one thing that might help is by covering the walls with towels or blankets, or by putting a pillow behind the computer or monitor so that noise isn't reflected back off from the wall. Now, it may also be a good idea to put a towel between the carpet and the door in case your household is a noisy one. Next up is to make sure that your video is high quality as well. The MacBook laptops tend to have really good built-in webcams. If you know that your webcam is not up to snuff, I would recommend buying an external webcam that's high quality. Try not to buy the cheapest webcam because there are big differences in quality in webcams. Make sure that you angle your camera properly and it's at arm's length. You'll also want to keep your camera at eye level by adding some textbooks on your laptop or monitor. And instead of staring at the screen, you should be focusing your eyes on the camera to be more engaging with your interviewer. A good tip to make sure your eye is focused on the camera is to take a little colored ping pong ball and attaching that right next to the camera using a piece of tape. You should also consider writing down high-level thoughts or reminders on little post-it notes and attaching those post-it notes to the side of your monitor. Body language is also really important. Try to sit up and not fidget or spin around in your chair. It'd be ideal to grab something like a dining room chair or something that doesn't rotate. As always, make sure to smile and be energetic. We highly recommend you testing your video by having a mock interview with your friends or family and asking if they see anything that's distracting or would otherwise detract from a good interview. Now, this video for the most part is to make sure that your interview is technically sound. But don't forget all the other interviewing advice like preparing for tricky questions, reading up on the program, and having questions for the interviewer after the interview is done. Ultimately, this is all about preparation. We want to make sure you have the right tools, the right mindset, and the right settings to prepare you for the entire interview season. I hope this video was helpful, and I hope it helps you land your ideal residency program. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Maddy Alexeeva.
And I'm Sean Oldroyd.
And we're the Associate Program Directors for the Emergency Medicine Residency at Kauai Delta Medical Center in Visalia, California.
Ours is a 3-year program that started in 2013, and you can find us at kauaem.com if you're interested to learn more.
Today, we're going to be talking about what to do if, after submitting your residency application and waiting patiently, you find yourself not receiving interview invitations. Or maybe you've got some interviews, but you still don't feel like you have enough interviews to feel confident about matching.
We'll spend some time talking about what to do at the outset to prevent this from happening, and then talk about ways you can address it throughout the application cycle.
The first and most important thing you can do to optimize your opportunities for an interview is to set yourself up for success at the outset of application season. Let's talk about the things you can't change at this point.
First thing, your step 1 score. If you're this far along, you've already taken step 1, and if the score wasn't as good as you wanted, it is what it is at this point.
Secondly, your preclinical grades in your class rank. Those classes are over and done.
Third, any unfortunate or potentially negative evaluations from your 3rd-year rotations. You can't change those evaluations, but you can work to limit their potential damage. So what is in your control? First, where you apply. Any days of saying, I'm going to apply to every emergency medicine program in the country are long gone. The EMRA-Match website lists 268 emergency medicine residencies in the United States, and the logistics and cost of applying to every single one is simply not realistic. Your goal should be to be strategic about where you apply.
You should spend time on sites like EMRA-Match and on each program's individual website. Be honest about your likelihood of matching there. It's fine to have a few programs on your list that are less realistic and more of a reach, but you don't want your entire list to be filled with those programs.
So what makes you more or less competitive for a program? Test scores, clinical evaluations, and letters matter, of course, but every program has other criteria that are important to them. Are you applying somewhere that publishes frequently and expects that of its residents, and you have no publications on your CV? That could be a problem. Likewise, are you applying somewhere that places a great emphasis on community involvement and service, and you don't share those same values? That could be a problem for you as well.
So what are some other things to think about when making your list? Location obviously matters, both for your happiness as a resident as well as your fit with the program. Some programs are more interested in candidates with a connection to the region. Does your school have a strong history of placing students at certain programs? That could be very beneficial to you and to other students who match there if they've represented your school well.
So take the time to learn about programs on your list. Then take an honest look at yourself as an applicant. Is it a good match? If so, keep it on the list. If not, it's time to find a new program to take that spot.
So how many programs should you be applying to? This is a continually recurring question without an easy answer.
Recent match data shows that applicants who match tend to put more than 10 programs on their rank list. So applying to enough programs to generate around 10 interview invites is the goal.
The strength of your application dictates how many programs you personally need to apply to in order to reach that number.
You need to be ruthless with yourself about any potential red flags on your application, and you need to address them. Did you get burned on an evaluation from third year? You better mention it. Score 200 on step 1 or fail it the first time? The programs are going to see it, so you need to acknowledge it, speak honestly about it, and talk about how you moved forward from it.
What are some other potential red flags? Taking any time off during med school can be completely justified, but the programs you're applying to have no way to know that unless it's addressed on your application. Any failed courses during clinical and preclinical years definitely need to be addressed. Did you cancel a rotation at a program you're now applying to? You should probably go by the good rule of thumb. If you're worried about being asked about it during an interview, you should probably just bring it up first and address it in your application. Okay, so you've submitted your application and now you are anxiously awaiting those interview invitations. When is it time to be concerned that you aren't getting enough? Let's talk about the timeline for a minute.
In a typical year, applications can be submitted in September and programs begin reviewing them immediately. But the dean's letters are usually not released by schools until sometime in October. Many programs wait to begin offering interviews until the dean's letters are out. So, if it's late September and you haven't heard anything, this is not the time to panic. This year, everything's different because of coronavirus. You can still submit your application in September, but they won't be available for programs to view until late October.
Many programs will have one or more automatic filters that decrease the number of potential interviewees. The most common filters are failing or not meeting a minimum score on step 1 or step 2 and failing a clinical clerkship. Every program differs. The reason this is important to know is that if you find yourself with one of these problems on your application, your file might never make it to the review phase and you may need to do some extra work to make contact with these programs.
What do programs look for when they're deciding who gets an interview? As you can see, the specialty-specific letter, the SLO, carries the most weight for programs, followed by the specialty-specific rotations and whether the applicant rotated at that program. Understand, this will inevitably change this year. As programs understand, most students are limited to a single emergency medicine rotation, will likely only have one SLO, and may not have had the opportunity to do a visiting rotation, even if they're greatly interested in a certain program.
So if it's still relatively early in the application season and you don't have one of these red flags on your application, relax. It's not time to panic yet. All right, so now it's November and you don't have enough interviews. Is it time to panic?
Well, panicking at any point in the process probably isn't very useful. But if you're getting into November without many interview invites, it's probably time to take some action. The question is what to do. Let's say you don't have any red flags, you don't think your application was filtered out, but you still don't have the invites you're hoping for. Should you email programs directly?
This is a complicated question without a clear answer, unfortunately. There has been discussion about this online between leaders from programs around the country, and as you might expect, some programs look favorably on this while others do not. If you feel like you want or need to send an email to express your interest, there are some general guidelines that you should follow.
First, be wise about how you do it. Whenever you email a program, you're adding work to someone's day. If a program gets a sense that you bulk emailed every program on your list in the hopes of getting a response from a few, they're likely to minimize the amount of extra work and just ignore your email. So, don't email every program, but consider emailing those programs you're especially interested in or you feel like you would be a great fit for.
Secondly, don't write too much. A brief email, again, to the program coordinator and not the program director, telling them why you're hoping to come for an interview is appropriate most of the time. Your goal here is to gain an ally, and being considerate of other people's times is an important part of doing that.
And finally, remember this might be a turnoff for some programs. So what else can you do at this point of the season?
If you have faculty members at your school who are willing to reach out to programs on your behalf, this is the time to have them do that. Make sure that number one, they feel comfortable making a positive recommendation for you. And number 2, they are connected enough to that particular program to make contact on your behalf.
Okay, so now it's January. You still don't feel like you have enough interviews. What do you do now?
Still, don't panic. Even if you don't match into an emergency medicine program this year, this is not the end of your emergency medicine story. It's probably time to think about what you'll do next year, and there are many people with very successful careers in emergency medicine who did not match their first year.
Now your focus needs to shift to setting yourself up for success next year. So what's the ideal use for that year? There's no perfect answer to this question. But if you're going to do a preliminary year or a transitional year, the best option is to do one at an institution with an emergency medicine residency. This way you'll have contact with emergency medicine faculty. Obviously, it may work out that you match there next year, but if not, you'll be able to have them write you a SLO if you can get an elective in their emergency department, and they may be able to contact other programs on your behalf.
Additionally, they might be able to give you a very objective and brutal assessment of your application from the previous year and help you understand where you may have gone wrong.
Your primary job as a prelim or transitional year resident will be to work as a PGY1 in that program, but you should have some opportunities to make connections with the emergency medicine faculty, and that may make the difference in your match next year.
Well, all right, that's been our whirlwind trip through the application season as we try to answer the question, what do we do if we're not getting interviews? Just remember these key points.
First, set yourself up for success. Choose well which programs you'll apply to, and be honest about any potential red flags in your application.
Second, early in the season, relax. These programs are likely still working through all of their applications, and remember, this year they're going to have a lot more than prior years.
Third, a brief, polite email to the program coordinator can be appropriate later in the season for programs you're especially interested in.
And finally, if it doesn't work out for you this year, that doesn't mean you need to give up on your dream of emergency medicine. It just means it's time to make a plan for success for next year.
We hope this has been helpful for you. Best of luck this season, and hopefully we'll see you online for an interview this fall.
Hi everyone, my name is Kenneth Kim, and I'm an MS4 at UCLA and the current chair of the Cal-EMRA Medical Student Council. The Cal-EMRA MSC is an organization founded this year that works under the umbrella of Cal-ACEP to support California medical students interested in emergency medicine throughout all 4 years. Whether it's through our quarterly newsletters, regional or virtual events, or helping to plan this year's AdvancED conference, we hope our efforts help you in your journey to emergency medicine. If this all sounds like something you'd like to be a part of, we'd love to have you join us. In the coming weeks, we will be sending out an application for our 2021 MSc leadership, and we hope interested MS1s through MS3s would consider applying. Even though we're a young group, we've made great progress in our projects this year and hope to make even greater things in the years to come. If you have any questions at all about joining the MSc or what we do, please feel free to reach out to me directly or to the Cal-ACEP leadership. We hope everyone has a wonderful rest of the conference. Thank you.
Thank you, Kent. And that's a great reminder for medical students and residents who are out there. Get involved. There's a lot that you can do at your level. I mean, at any level, you can get involved with Cal-ACEP. So even as a medical student, there's so much that you can do. Anneli, I thought this was a really great program. We heard from a lot of interesting speakers. I learned a lot. I wanted to ask you, what were some of the things that stood out to you the most? What were some of the key learning points?
I think there's so much good stuff in there. And I particularly appreciate how Dr. Hu and Orozco proved what pros they are at making the tech make you look good. That segment had so many solid gold pieces of advice and also looked so slick and beautiful. Fantastic job. Really I thought that Dr. Alexeeva and Dr. Oldroyd touched on some really important and tricky, challenging aspects of this process that are really hard to navigate. And I thought they gave such great guidelines. So I hope that everyone was really paying attention to what they put out there. And I know that Dr. Alexeeva is in the chat right now if you have any follow-up questions.
I wanted to ask you a question, Anneli, about their talk. One of the things that they talked about was emailing programs, reaching out to people if you're not getting interviews. I know at this point, it's been a few years since I went through the process myself, but I feel like I was in that boat and I got a few interviews up front, and then I was kind of waiting for certain programs that I wasn't hearing back from. And I did send off emails, and this resulted in a lot more interviews for me. I did targeted emails where I, explained exactly why that program I was really interested in interviewing at. I felt like that was an effective technique for me, but I know how that could, like they were kind of warning, could work against you if it's not done the right way. What are your thoughts about that? What do you do? What's going through your mind when you receive an email from someone who's really hoping for an interview at our program?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that is sort of the guidelines that they gave you about making sure that it's personalized, that it's genuine, realizing that you're putting sort of more work on somebody's plate. I think that's important. Timing is also really important. And they mentioned the shifted timeline this year. Many California programs, although certainly not all, are participating in the county unified release date. So I know we are, and many other programs will not be releasing any interview invites until November 2nd. So definitely no need to necessarily send a lot of communications before then, and wait until November 2nd, 3rd, 4th to be starting to hear from a lot of programs. But if you still haven't heard from us after that, and you want to tell me why you're so particularly excited about Fresno, and you can send me a nice brief email expressing that genuine and particular interest or connection, I'm always going to read that as you advocating for yourself. And you have to advocate for yourself in this process. And maybe it'll prompt me to go back and take another look at your application, or to make sure that the interview invite that we intended to send has gone out. I think it's always really helpful if you have a new piece of information to share. So like if you've done a new rotation, you have a new grade, a new letter of recommendation that's uploaded that wasn't there when I downloaded your application on October 21st. There's some new piece of information. That's a great excuse to reach out to programs and to let them know, like, hey, I have this new letter that's up. And also, I love your program so much for these two really specific reasons, and I would love the opportunity to interview with you. I think that'll always work in your favor, although it certainly depends on how you handle it and how it's going to be received.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Being respectful of people's time and being personal, I think, is important. What else stood out to you, Anneli? What other pieces of wisdom would you like to impart on our medical students who are nervously awaiting the moment that they can click the button to submit their application and waiting to hear back?
I think a sort of theme for today has been take a deep breath, and it's going to be okay. There's challenges, and for some people there's going to be a lot of hiccups, but hopefully with all of the information that's been shared, especially in that last segment, you know that even if things don't go exactly according to plan or exactly how you hoped, there are still steps to be taken, and there's still a future for you in emergency medicine, even if you haven't gotten as many interviews as you want right away, or even if, heaven forfend, you don't find that you've matched on match day. That's not the end of the road for you. And if you really feel that emergency medicine is where your passion lies, then you can forge your own way in this fantastic field. And with the help of all of these wonderful, fantastic people who created all this great content, because we care about the future of emergency medicine, and all of the wonderful students who are so bright and excited about joining this really fantastic field.
I want to give my 2 cents, my sort of soapbox that I've been sharing with the medical students, the few medical students that have been rotating with us. And I just want to reiterate that take a deep breath. It's going to be okay. I know that it feels high stress, and especially this year of any year, it's even worse. And people are, usually perseverate on the top programs they really want to get into. And I think programs also pitch themselves as like, we're the best, or we're one of the top programs. And while I want to feel that way about our program, like, let me just reassure everyone that wherever you match, it's going to be okay. Right? There's a lot we can't control this year, And wherever you end up matching, you are going to be well trained. You're going to be trained by board certified emergency physicians. You're going to learn the specialty. You're going to make it, and it's going to be all right. Even if it's not the exact path that you saw your future taking, just take a deep breath and realize how lucky you are that you've gone through the training up until this point. You've been one of the lucky ones to get into medical school, to train in this incredible specialty, to serve in a great time of need, and that you have a job. So many people don't even have that right now. So when that match day comes and you match, and maybe it's not 1 or 2, but maybe it's 7, 8, or 12 or 20 on your list, you have a job. And so let's be grateful for that and see the big picture that it is going to be okay. Anneli, I'll give you the final word. Any final thoughts you want to share before we wrap up?
I just want to say a big thank you to all of our fantastic presenters, speaking to how many amazing programs there are in emergency medicine. We've seen people representing programs all over California and doing amazing work. So thank you so much to all of our presenters. Thank you so much to the track planning committee. We had to totally redo everything this year, as is the theme for the year, reinventing all the wheels on the bus. But we had a fantastic team working on it. So I just wanted to give a big shout out and big thank you to Natasha Wheaton, Jason Ahn, Maddy Alexeeva, Keishan Patel, Gina Hanna, of course, the inimitable one-woman show that is Kelsey McQuaid, and also for helping us to reinvent and design our virtual residency fair, which is coming up next, Tiffany Fant and Elle Kettler as well. So thank you so much to everyone for all of your hard work. Hopefully you guys have all gotten a lot out of all of the content that we've presented today. Feel free to contact people that have presented, continue the conversation in the chat, and hopefully, and I will be touching base with you all very shortly to talk about the residency fair.
We're going to get to that in just a minute. And so that was said beautifully. Thank you, Anneli. Thank you to the planning committee, California ACEP. Thank you to Kelsey, the track chairs, everyone. Thank you to MRAP. MRAP's been an amazing sponsor for us, and our other sponsors as well, who've helped make this conference possible. And so we are going to wrap up for today. Next year, if things get better, and we sure hope they do, we will see you on September 10th, 2021 in San Diego at the Westin Gas Lamp. We've already got it booked, right? So we hope to see you there, and we'll do this all in person. We hope next year if things are more back to normal. And so thanks again for everyone joining us. Remember that you can view the posters and the videos that the poster presenters have created. And Kelsey is going to post a link so that you can access that. You can also do that through the landing page. Also, remember through our handouts link, you can get involved with Cal ACEP, get some more information there. And also in the handouts is the residency fair breakdown with hyperlinks to get you into all of those breakout sessions. So I'm going to wrap it up and turn it over once again to Anneli, who is going to explain how the residency fair session is going to work. So thank you to Natasha and Anneli for planning the residency fair. And now Dr. von Reinhart will walk you through how we're doing the digital residency fair this year.
Yeah, so we're really excited to present our first ever virtual residency fair. And how it's going to work is there are 45-minute time slots for each of the 21 programs participating. We're really excited this year to have 21 out of 22 of all of California's programs participating, including several brand new residencies that are recruiting for their very first classes. So each program has a 45-minute time slot, and they're staggered with only 3 or 4 programs at a time. So as medical students, if you want to, you can focus on 3 or 4 programs, spending the whole 45-minute time slot with them, or you can kind of jump around a little bit. It's in a webinar format, so you'll be able to see the program leadership and residents from those programs talking and answering your questions. We realize that this virtual residency fair is happening in the context of many virtual residency fairs and many virtual information sessions. So we're encouraging people to use this as a real opportunity for Q&A. So participants, you can go to the Q&A section of any of these webinars for each program and ask your question, any question that you can't easily research the answer to. And you can upvote other people's questions if you see like, yes, I really want these guys to talk about that. Many of these sessions will be recorded, and so you'll be able to come back to the webinar landing page to see what was talked about in that session if maybe you had to jump away to go to another commitment or go to another residency fair time slot. But I really encourage you to use that Q&A opportunity to also explore the links provided on the webinar pages, and to, of course, contact programs or participants in the webinars if you have any follow-up questions. We hope that everyone has a really great and robust virtual residency fair experience. Have fun.